Lord Tahoe stood at the window of his grand chamber, watching the twin moons of Voska rise over the capital city. His long, scaled fingers tapped nervously against the polished stone. Behind him, his advisors waited in silence, afraid to disturb his thoughts. The council meeting did not go well. Tahoe finally said, his voice deep and rumbling, "3 more houses have joined Minho's coalition against me." His chief advisor, Doyan, stepped forward. "My lord, they question your strength. The matter of your third daughter remains problematic." Tahoe's jaw tightened. Ju, his mistake, his shame. In Voskan society, strength and military prowess were everything. Their empire had conquered 12 star systems through tactical brilliance and emotional control. Empathy was considered a weakness, a dangerous flaw that could compromise a warrior's resolve. And Ju had been born with the strongest empathic mutation seen in generations. "Bring me the reports on the human delegation," Tahoe ordered suddenly. Doyan quickly produced a data tablet. They arrive tomorrow to discuss mining rights on the outer planets. Their lead diplomat is named Hyunwoo. "What do we know of these humans?" "Little, my lord. They are physically weaker than us, with no scales or natural defenses. Their technology is adequate, but not impressive. However, they have formed successful alliances with 17 species, more than any other race in the quadrant." "How? What is their advantage?" Doyan hesitated. "They appear to value emotional connections. They use understanding and compromise rather than strength to build relationships." Tahoe's eyes narrowed as an idea formed. Emotional creatures who value connection. Interesting. The next day, in the grand reception hall, Tahoe sat on his elevated throne, surrounded by his military commanders. The human delegation entered, looking small and soft compared to the tall, scaled Voskans. The human diplomat bowed respectfully. "Lord Tahoe, I am Hyunwoo. On behalf of Earth's United Planetary Alliance, I thank you for this opportunity to discuss mutual beneficial arrangements." Tahoe studied the human. Hyunwoo was shorter than any adult Voskan, with smooth skin instead of protective scales. Yet there was something in his eyes. Intelligence, confidence, but also something Tahoe rarely saw in his own kind. Warmth. "Welcome to Voska Prime," Tahoe replied formally. "Your reputation precedes you. Humans are known to be uniquely skilled at creating connections between diverse species." Hyunwoo smiled. "We believe understanding differences creates strength, not weakness." The formal introductions continued, followed by preliminary discussions about the contested mining planets. Throughout the talks, Tahoe observed the human carefully. Hyunwoo was diplomatic but firm, never showing fear despite being surrounded by Voskan warriors. That evening, Tahoe summoned his advisor. "Bring Ju to my chambers. Do not let her be seen." An hour later, his daughter stood before him, eyes downcast as she'd been taught. At 16 cycles, Ju was nearly full-grown but still slender. Unlike other Voskans, her scales had a faint blue tint, another physical manifestation of her genetic difference. "Father," she said quietly, "you wish to see me." "Look at me, Ju." She raised her eyes, and Tahoe saw what made his general so uncomfortable. Where Voskan eyes should show calculated control, hers revealed every emotion, currently fear, confusion, and a desperate hope for approval. "Tomorrow, you will meet the human diplomat," Tahoe said. Surprise flashed across her face before she controlled it. "I am to attend a diplomatic function." "No. You are to become part of the negotiation." Tahoe walked around her, assessing. The humans value emotional beings. They may see worth in what our kind considers your weakness. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You're giving me away." "I am creating a strategic alliance," Tahoe corrected sharply. "You will be offered as a bondmate to the human diplomat. It will appear to be a great honor, the daughter of a Voskan lord." Juwoo's hands trembled slightly. "And what if he refuses?" "He won't. These humans collect strays and oddities from across the galaxy, At worst, you'll be a servant in his household. At best, you'll provide valuable intelligence about human society. Ju was silent for a long moment. And you'll no longer have to hide me away. Tahoe didn't deny it. Prepare yourself. Wear the formal robes. Remember your training. Show respect. Speak only when spoken to. Do not embarrass me. The next morning, the mining negotiations continued. Hyunwoo presented terms that Tahoe found surprisingly favorable. The planets would remain under Voskan control, with humans receiving only limited extraction rights in exchange for technical assistance and trade routes. Your terms are acceptable, Tahoe announced, causing murmurs of surprise among his generals. In fact, I wish to offer something more to cement our new alliance. At his signal, the side doors opened. Ju entered, wearing formal blue robes that accentuated her unusual coloring. She kept her eyes down as she approached and knelt beside her father's throne. "This is my daughter, Ju," Tahoe announced. "As a symbol of the trust between our peoples, I offer her as a bondmate to you, diplomat Hyunwoo." Shocked silence filled the room. The human delegation exchanged glances. Even Tahoe's generals seemed stunned by this unexpected move. Hyunwoo recovered first. "Lord Tahoe, this is unexpected. In human culture, we do not typically exchange people as diplomatic gifts." "She is not a gift," Tahoe replied smoothly. "She is my blood, a princess of the Voskan Empire. Such unions have sealed the greatest alliances in our history." Hyunwoo looked at Ju, who still knelt with her eyes down. "May I speak with her?" Tahoe nodded stiffly. Such a request was unusual, but he had to play along. Hyunwoo approached and knelt down to Juwoo's level, a shocking breach of protocol that made the Voskan guard stiffen. "Hello, Juwoo," Hyunwoo said gently. "Is this arrangement something you want?" Juwoo looked up, startled by the direct question. For a brief moment, Tahoe saw her empathic abilities at work. Her eyes widened as she seemed to sense something from the human. I would be honored to learn human ways," she said carefully. Hyunwoo studied her for a long moment, then rose and turned to Tahoe. "I accept this honor with profound gratitude. Lord Tahoe, your daughter appears to be exceptionally intelligent and perceptive. I will ensure she receives the finest education and opportunities in the human alliance." Tahoe had expected reluctant acceptance at best, perhaps even veiled disgust at being offered a flawed Voskan. He had not expected genuine appreciation. For a moment, he wondered if he had miscalculated. "You recognize her qualities?" he asked cautiously. "I do," Hyunwoo replied with a smile. "What some might see as differences, we humans often recognize as gifts. I believe Juwoo will thrive among us." As the arrangements were finalized, Tahoe watched his daughter's face. For the first time in years, he saw something there besides fear and resignation. He saw hope. It unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He had solved a political problem and gained favorable trade terms. That was all that mattered. Whatever happened to Juwoo now was no longer his concern. Yet as the human gently helped his daughter to her feet, treating her with a respect she had never known on her homeworld, Tahoe felt an unfamiliar twinge, something almost like regret. Juwoo stood at the viewing portal of the human ship Harmony, watching her home planet shrink to a glowing dot. She had never been off-world before. The tight knot in her stomach was part fear, part excitement, and part disbelief. Just yesterday, she had been hidden away in her father's palace, a secret shame. Today, she was leaving with aliens to a world she knew almost nothing about. "Is this your first space journey?" asked a gentle voice behind her. Jiwoo turned quickly and lowered her eyes as she had been taught. "Yes, Diplomat Hyunwoo. Please, just call me Hyunwoo," he said, "and you don't need to look down when speaking with me. Among humans, we'd prefer to look at each other. It helps us connect." Jiwoo cautiously raised her eyes. On Voska, making direct eye contact with a superior was considered challenging their authority. But Hyunwoo's face showed no anger, only patience. "I've arranged quarters for you," he continued. Would you like to see them? Juwoo nodded, following him through the ship's corridors. She was surprised to see other non-humans aboard. A tall, thin being with 4 arms organizing cargo, and a short, furry creature checking control panels. That's Kisi, our engineering specialist, Hanwoo explained, following her gaze to the 4-armed being. And that's Dr. Ron, our medical officer. They work for humans. Juwoo asked. With humans, Hanwoo corrected gently. We're all crew members here. Different species, equal status. This concept was so foreign to Juwoo that she struggled to understand it. In the Voskan Empire, conquered species served. They were never equals. Her quarters were small but comfortable, with a sleeping platform adjusted to Voskan physiology. There was even a temperature control set to the warmer climate her species preferred. I hope this will be suitable, Hyunwoo said. If you need anything changed, just ask. Also, I want to clarify something important. On Earth, there is no such thing as a bondmate arrangement like your father described. You are not my property or servant. Juwoo blinked in confusion. Then why did you accept me? Because I believe everyone deserves safety and opportunity, he said simply. On Earth, you'll be considered a refugee under my guardianship until you're fully adult by your species standards. After that, your life will be your own to choose. The concept was so overwhelming that Juwoo couldn't respond. Freedom to choose had never been part of her vocabulary. Over the next few days, Juwoo began to explore the ship cautiously. Each time, she expected to be scolded or sent back to her quarters, but instead, crew members smiled and often explained what they were doing. In the ship's common area, she met Mira, the human communications officer. Unlike the formal, rigid interactions of Voskan society, Mira talked freely, asking Juwoo questions about herself as if her opinions mattered. Is it true Voskans are all telepaths? Mira asked as they shared a meal. No, Juwoo replied, hesitant to discuss her difference. Most Voskans have no mental abilities. My condition is rare and considered a defect. What condition? Juwoo stared at her food. I can sense emotions. It interferes with logical thinking and combat readiness. In our society, it makes me unsuitable. Mira looked surprised. That's fascinating. Among humans, we call that empathy, and it's highly valued. Some humans naturally have more than others, but we consider it a strength, not a weakness. A strength. Juwoo repeated, the concept foreign to her. Of course, understanding others' feelings helps in communication, cooperation, conflict resolution. Several species in our alliance have similar abilities. The Tesseri are touch empaths, and they're some of our best negotiators. For the first time in her life, Juwoo wondered if her difference might not be a flaw after all. 2 weeks into their journey, Juwoo was in the observation deck with Dr. Ron, the furry medical officer who was teaching her about star navigation, when she felt a sudden sharp spike of emotion. Anger. Determination. Focused intent. Something's wrong, she said, her scales bristling. What do you mean? Asked Dr. Ron. I feel hostile minds. Close to us. Hunting. Juwoo struggled to explain what her empathic sense was detecting. Dr. Ron looked skeptical, but tapped his communication device. Bridge, this is Ron. Our Voskan guest is sensing something unusual. Could we run a perimeter scan? Before anyone could respond, the ship jolted violently. Alarm signals blared throughout the corridors. We're under attack, came the captain's voice over the communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. Juwoo and Dr. Ron hurried to the bridge, where screens showed 3 smaller vessels surrounding them. Hyunwoo was there, looking concerned as he conferred with the captain. Voskan raiders, the captain identified. They're jamming our communications. How did they find us? Hyunwoo wondered. They've been tracking us, Juwoo said. Everyone turned to look at her. I can feel their intentions. They believe you have valuable technology. They've been following since we left Voskan space. The captain looked doubtful, but Hyunwoo asked, can you tell what they plan to do next? Ju closed her eyes, focusing on the emotion she could sense from the attacking ships. They're splitting up. 2 ships will attack from the front as distraction. The third will target your engine systems from below. The captain hesitated only briefly before ordering, reinforce lower shields. Prepare counterattack pattern Delta. Within moments, the attack unfolded exactly as Ju had predicted. Because of the prepared defense, the Harmony was able to deflect the engine attack and disable one of the raider vessels. They're regrouping, Ju reported, her eyes still closed. The leader is angry, considering a more direct approach. They will attempt to board us through the cargo bay. The captain immediately dispatched security teams to the cargo area. When the raiders attempted to cut through the hull there minutes later, they were met with prepared resistance and quickly retreated. They're giving up, Ju said, feeling the raiders' frustration and fear. They didn't expect you to know their plans. As the raider ships disengaged and fled, an amazed silence fell over the bridge. Then Dr. Ron patted Ju's shoulder. That was remarkable, he said. You saved the ship. The captain nodded in agreement. I've never seen anything like it. You could sense their intentions before they acted. It's just what I've always been able to do, Ju explained, uncomfortable with the attention. On Voska, it's considered interference with clear tactical thinking. On this ship, the captain replied, it's considered an extraordinary gift, one we're grateful for. For the first time in her life, Ju stood tall, her scales brightening with the unfamiliar warmth of pride. The ability that had made her an outcast on her homeworld had just made her valuable here. Later, Hyunwoo found her back at the viewing portal, looking out at the stars. Are you all right? He asked. That was an intense experience. I've never used my ability like that before, Ju admitted. On Voska, I was taught to suppress it, to be ashamed of it. Among humans and our allies, such gifts are treasured, Hyunwoo said. Your father may have thought he was discarding something unwanted, but from our perspective, he gave us something precious. Ju considered this. I was afraid of where I was going. Now I'm curious. Hyunwoo smiled. That's good. Earth has a saying. Sometimes what we consider our greatest weakness becomes our greatest strength when placed in the right environment. As she watched the stars streak by, Ju felt something new growing inside her, hope for a future where she might belong. The descent to Earth filled Ju with wonder. From orbit, the planet was a swirl of blue, green, and white, so different from Voska's red deserts and purple seas. As their shuttle broke through the clouds, she pressed her face against the viewport, amazed by the endless variety of landscapes below. It's beautiful, she whispered. Wait until you meet the people, Hyunwoo said with a smile. The shuttle landed at a diplomatic port outside a city called Seoul. Ju had expected a military greeting, perhaps officials to process her as the political asset she assumed she was. Instead, she was surprised to see just 2 people waiting, an older human woman with silver-streaked hair and a younger human female who looked similar to Hyunwoo. Ju, I'd like you to meet my mother, Professor Sunmi, and my sister, Jisoo, Hyunwoo said as they approached. Ju gave the formal Voskan bow she'd been taught for diplomatic occasions. I am honored to meet the family of diplomat Hyunwoo. I pledge my loyalty to your household. The older woman looked at Hyunwoo with raised eyebrows. He explained quietly, cultural differences. We'll work on it. To Ju's shock, Professor Sunmi stepped forward and gently took her scaled hands. No pledges needed here, dear. We're simply happy you're safe. Welcome to our home. Home, Ju repeated, confused. I'm to stay with your family unit, not at a diplomatic compound. Of course you'll stay with us, Jisoo said brightly. We've prepared a room for you. I hope you like blue. Hyunwoo mentioned your scales have that beautiful tint. Ju felt overwhelmed. In all her preparation for this journey, she had never considered the possibility of being treated as a guest, family member. She wasn't sure what her status was supposed to be. The Kim family lived in a house surrounded by gardens on the outskirts of Seoul. It was modest by Voskan noble standards, but filled with colors, artwork, and plants from across the galaxy. Professor Sunmi, Ju learned, was an expert in interspecies communication and psychology. Jisoo was a medical student specializing in xenobiology. On her first evening, Ju sat stiffly at the family dinner table, watching in silence as the three humans talked, laughed, and occasionally disagreed, all without any formal protocols or hierarchy. When Jisoo teased Hyunwoo about a mistake he'd made during negotiations, Ju tensed, expecting punishment for such disrespect. Instead, Hyunwoo laughed along with his sister. "Is something wrong?" Professor Sunmi asked, noticing Juwoo's discomfort. "On Voska, one does not mock a superior's actions," Juwoo explained carefully. "Superior?" Jisoo looked confused. "He's just my brother. But he is older and holds diplomatic rank." The three humans exchanged glances. "Family doesn't work that way here," Professor Sunmi explained gently. "Within a family, we're equals. Different roles, perhaps, but equal value." This concept was so foreign that Juwoo struggled to comprehend it. "Then what is my position in this household?" "You're our guest," Hyunwoo said. "Eventually, perhaps a friend. There's no hierarchy to worry about." Later that night, unable to sleep, Juwoo accessed the information terminal in her room. She searched for news about her arrival and was shocked by what she found. Earth media described her as a refugee from the militaristic Voskan Empire who had been rescued by Hyunwoo's diplomatic mission. There was no mention of a bondmate arrangement or political alliance. Instead, sympathetic stories about her escape from persecution due to her empathic abilities. Juwoo sat back, stunned. She wasn't a diplomatic asset here. She was a cause. 2 weeks later, Professor Sunmi found Juwoo in the garden, practicing the meditation techniques she'd been teaching her. "You're getting quite good at that," the professor said approvingly. Juwoo opened her eyes. "It helps me focus my abilities. I can now sense emotions from specific individuals without being overwhelmed by everyone around me." "That's excellent progress." Professor Sunmi sat beside her on the stone bench. "How are you adjusting to life here?" "It's confusing," Juwoo admitted. "Yesterday I watched a documentary about Earth's place in galactic politics. By Voskan standards, humans should be insignificant. Your weapons technology is inferior to 12 other species. Your ships are not the fastest. Your planets are not the richest in resources." "All true," Professor Sunmi agreed with a smile. "Yet you have alliances with more species than any empire. Even the Voskan Council respects human diplomatic skill. How is this possible?" Professor Sunmi looked thoughtful. "Most species expand through superiority in some area. Better weapons, faster ships, more resources. Humans realized early that our strength wasn't in having the best of anything, but in combining what everyone has to offer. Cooperation instead of conquest," Juwoo said slowly. "Exactly. And that requires emotional intelligence, understanding different perspectives, finding common ground, building trust. The very abilities your people consider defects." Juwoo nodded, thinking of how differently her empathic nature was viewed here. Instead of being hidden away, she was attending classes at the Interspecies Academy 3 days a week, learning alongside young beings from a dozen worlds. "I've been thinking about sharing my experiences," Juwoo said hesitantly, "to help others understand the differences between our cultures." "That's a wonderful idea. How would you do it?" "There's a platform some of my classmates use, Galactic Reddit. It allows anonymous sharing across species boundaries." Professor Sunmi looked pleased. "I think you'd have a unique perspective to offer." That evening, Juwoo created her first post. Galactic Reddit, /interspecies experiences. I am a Voskan living with a human family. On my world, family units exist for political and military advantage. Children are assets valued for their strategic potential. Those born different, like me with empathic abilities, are hidden away as failures. In my human host family, I've discovered something new. They value each other simply for existing. They help each other without calculating advantage. They express emotions freely without shame. When I asked why humans form families this way, they said simply, because we love each other. This concept of love, unconditional positive regard without strategic purpose, does not exist in Voskan language. I am learning it now, and it changes everything. Juhu hesitated before pressing submit, wondering if anyone would care about her observations. By morning, her post had gone viral across 12 sectors, with thousands of responses from beings across the galaxy. Many shared similar experiences of culture shock when encountering human emotional concepts. Others asked questions about Voskan society that Juhu had never thought to question before. Over the next few months, Juhu's galactic Reddit posts became increasingly popular. She wrote about Professor Sumi teaching her to meditate to control her empathic abilities, about Jisu explaining human medical ethics, about the first time she went shopping with human friends, and was allowed to choose her own clothing styles. Each post generated massive discussion. Most surprising were the private messages from other Voskans, young ones with empathic mutations like hers, hidden away by ashamed families, now secretly following her story and daring to hope for acceptance elsewhere. 6 months after her arrival on Earth, Ju sat with Hyunwoo in the garden, watching the sunset. "I received a message today," she said. "A data analyst on Voska Prime claims my posts on Galactic Reddit have been read by over 60% of the Voskan nobility, though officially such platforms are banned." Hyunwoo looked surprised. "Including your father?" "Especially my father," Ju said with a small smile. "The analyst says Lord Taeho's aides print my posts for him daily. Are you concerned?" Ju considered this, reaching out with her now refined abilities to check her own emotions. "No," she said finally. "I'm curious. Something is changing, both in me and back home. I don't know where it leads, but for the first time, I'm not afraid to find out." Ju adjusted her formal Earth diplomat uniform, smoothing the blue fabric that had been specially designed to accommodate her Voskan scales. The mirror reflected someone very different from the frightened young alien who had arrived on Earth 3 years ago. Now 21 by Voskan counting, she stood taller, her blue-tinted scales gleaming with health, her eyes direct and confident. "Are you sure about this?" Professor Sumi asked, helping Ju attach her Xenanthropology Academy pin to her collar. "No one would blame you for refusing to meet them." "I'm sure," Ju replied. "Besides, I'm curious to see Commander Doyan again. He was my father's chief advisor." The news had shocked Earth 3 days ago. A Voskan battle fleet had entered the solar system, demanding the return of stolen Voskan property, meaning Ju. Earth's diplomatic corps had managed to arrange a meeting instead of immediately surrendering to demands. Juwoo's galactic Reddit posts had made her something of a celebrity. Her thoughtful comparisons between Voskan military hierarchy and Earth's cooperative approach had been studied in academies across 17 systems. Her perspective as both insider and outsider gave her unique insights that neither humans nor Voskans alone could provide. "I've studied the data from our intelligence sources," Hyunwoo said, entering the room. "Your father faces serious challenges at home. 3 major houses have formed a coalition against him, and they're using your popularity as evidence of his weakness." "How is my success a sign of his weakness?" Ju asked. "They claim he was outsmarted by humans," Hyunwoo explained. "That he lost a valuable asset instead of recognizing your potential." Ju nodded slowly. "So he needs to either bring me back as a show of power, or find some way to claim your success was his plan all along," Hyunwoo finished. The diplomatic meeting was held in Earth's orbital station, neutral ground between the planet and the Voskan fleet. Ju sat beside Earth's chief diplomat, facing Commander Doyan, and 2 other Voskan officials across the gleaming table. "Lady Ju," Doyan began formally, "your father, Lord Taeho, requires your return to Voska Prime immediately." Juwu felt a flutter of old fear, but her years of training helped her remain calm. She extended her empathic senses cautiously, brushing against the emotions in the room. From Doyan, she sensed not just determination, but also doubt, conflict. "Commander Doyan, I am no longer a child to be commanded," she replied evenly. "I am an adult by both Voskan and Earth standards, and I choose to remain here." "You misunderstand," one of the other Voskans said sharply. "This is not a request. The battle fleet is prepared to enforce Lord Tahoe's will." The Earth diplomat began to respond, but Juwu touched his arm gently to silence him. She focused her empathic abilities more intently on Doyan. "Commander," she said quietly, "there's something you're not telling us. I can sense your conflict. What is really happening on Voska Prime?" Doyan's scales darkened slightly, the Voskan equivalent of a blush. "Your abilities have grown stronger," he observed. "Your father's enemies gain power daily. They claim that allowing you to share Voskan cultural knowledge on public forums is treason. 3 houses now openly call for Lord Tahoe to step down. And my return would somehow help him maintain power. It would show strength," Doyan replied, "that he can command respect even from Earth." Juwu considered this. "I will not return as property or a political tool. However, I would consider a visit as an Earth diplomatic representative to discuss cultural exchange programs." The other Voskan officials looked outraged, but Doyan seemed thoughtful. Such a compromise might. Suddenly, Juwu felt a sharp spike of malice and anticipation. It wasn't coming from anyone at the table, but from somewhere nearby. Her scales bristled in alarm. "Everyone down," she shouted, diving across the table to push Doyan to the floor. A second later, 3 small spherical objects burst through the air vents, hovering briefly before firing laser pulses at the exact spots where both Voskan and human heads had been moments before. "Assassination drones," the Earth security officer yelled, drawing his weapon. Juwu maintained her focus, her empathic senses stretched to their limit. "There's someone controlling them nearby," she said urgently. 2 people. That way." She pointed toward a maintenance corridor. Security teams from both delegations rushed in the direction she indicated while others dealt with the drones. In the chaos, Juwu realized she was still crouched protectively over Commander Doyan, who was looking at her with astonishment. "You saved my life," he said. "Why?" "Because lives have value beyond political usefulness," she replied, helping him up. "That's something I learned on Earth." Hours later, the security teams had captured 2 operatives, neither human nor Voskan, but members of the Krell Consortium, a shadowy organization known to profit from interspecies conflicts. Evidence found on their devices revealed a plot to assassinate key members of both delegations, making each side believe the other was responsible. In the station's secure conference room, Doyan and the Earth diplomats reviewed the findings. "The Krell stood to gain billions if our species went to war," Heinwu explained. "Weapons contracts, reconstruction deals, resource exploitation rights during the conflict." Doyan's scales had gone pale, a sign of shock in Voskans. "We would have blamed Earth immediately. Our fleet would have attacked within hours. And Earth would have believed Voskans had tried to assassinate our diplomats," the Earth security chief added. "Our defense systems would have responded." All eyes turned to Juwu, who sat quietly at the end of the table. "If you hadn't sensed their intentions," Doyan began. "The very ability that made me unsuitable on Voska Prime," Juwu said with a small smile. Commander Doyan straightened formally. "Lady Juwu, I must report this development to Lord Tahoe immediately. Would you be willing to speak with him directly? I believe he should hear what happened from you." Juwu felt a complex mix of emotions at the thought of facing her father again, even via communication screen. Fear, anger, curiosity, but also a strange hope. "Yes," she said finally. "I think it's time we spoke." As preparations were made for the communication link, Heinwu pulled Juwu aside. "Are you certain about this?" he asked. You don't owe him anything. Juwu looked thoughtful. For 3 years, I've been writing about the differences between our cultures, about how Earth values connection over conquest, cooperation over control. Perhaps it's time to demonstrate those principles rather than just describe them. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing Lord Taho sitting rigidly in his command chair. His scales had more gray than Juwu remembered, his eyes more lines around them. For a moment, neither spoke, each taking in how the other had changed. "Father," Juwu said finally, breaking protocol by speaking first, "I believe we have matters to discuss." In that moment, looking into her father's surprised eyes, Juwu realized something important. She was no longer afraid of him. Earth had not just given her a home, it had given her strength. Whatever came next, she would face it not as the discarded daughter of a Voskan lord, but as herself, a bridge between two worlds that desperately needed to understand each other. The grand hall of the Voskan High Council shimmered with ceremonial lights, casting patterns across the scaled faces of the assembled lords and military commanders. Lord Taho stood at the center platform, his formal armor gleaming, as he addressed the gathered elite of Voskan society. "The Krell assassination attempt has revealed what some of us have suspected for years," he declared, his voice strong and confident. "Traditional Voskan isolation leaves us vulnerable to manipulation by outside forces. This is why, 3 years ago, I made the strategic decision to place my most gifted daughter in the Human Alliance." A murmur ran through the crowd. Juwu, watching from a side chamber through a viewing screen, couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was not the story as it had happened, yet she recognized the political brilliance of her father's move. Lady Juwu's unique empathic abilities, which some short-sightedly viewed as flaws, were precisely the talents needed to understand human diplomatic methods. Lord Taho continued. Her placement among them was not abandonment but investment in Voskan future security. The results speak for themselves. She single-handedly prevented a war engineered by our enemies. From beside Juwu, Himmu whispered, "Your father is quite the political operator." "He always was," Juwu replied quietly. "I just never thought he would use those skills to champion me." On the screen, Lord Taho was addressing challenges from rival houses. Lord Minho, his chief rival, stood to speak. "This rewriting of history is convenient," Minho said coldly. "We all know the truth. You discarded a daughter you considered flawed." Lord Taho's scales darkened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Results matter more than intentions, Lord Minho. Whether you believe I planned this from the beginning or adapted to opportunity, the outcome benefits all Voskans. My daughter's connection with humans has already yielded preliminary trade agreements worth triple our previous interstellar commerce." This silenced even Minho. Economic advantage was something every Voskan understood. "Furthermore," Taho continued, "I propose we establish a new division within our diplomatic corps, specialists trained in emotional intelligence and cross-species communication. My daughter has agreed to return to Voska Prime temporarily to help establish this program." Juwu took a deep breath. Tomorrow, she would step onto her homeworld for the first time in 3 years, not as the shameful secret daughter, but as Ambassador Juwu, Earth diplomatic representative. The landing pad at Voska Prime's capital sparkled under the red sun. Juwu descended from the diplomatic shuttle wearing a unique uniform that blended Earth diplomatic blues with traditional Voskan formal styling. Professor Sunmi had helped design it as a visual symbol of Juwu's dual identity. Lord Taho waited at the bottom of the ramp with a formal honor guard. For a tense moment, father and daughter faced each other in person for the first time since her departure. Then, to the shock of everyone present, Lord Taho stepped forward and placed his hands on Juwu's shoulders. A gesture of familial recognition almost never used in public by Voskan nobility. "Welcome home, daughter," he said, loud enough for all to hear. Juwu felt the sincerity beneath his political calculation. Her empathic abilities, now finely tuned through years of training, detected the complex emotions her father worked so hard to conceal: pride, regret, and something that might, with time, grow into respect. "Thank you, Father," she replied formally. "I bring greetings from Earth and proposals for mutual benefit." As they walked together toward the palace, Jiwoo noted the changes in her homeworld. Posters announcing new cultural exchange programs lined the walkways. Some younger Voskans wore modified clothing with Earth-inspired elements. And most surprisingly, she spotted at least 3 young Voskans with the telltale blue-tinted scales of the empathic mutation, walking openly rather than being hidden away. "Your galactic Reddit posts have had effects," Lord Tahoe said, following her gaze. "Some traditions are being questioned. Not all changes are welcome, but change itself is inevitable." "And what do you think of these changes, Father?" Jiwoo asked carefully. Lord Tahoe was silent for a moment. "I think Voska must adapt or be left behind. The Krell incident proved that. And I think I may have been wrong about certain things." Coming from her father, this was an extraordinary admission. The next 6 weeks passed in a flurry of diplomatic meetings, public appearances, and the establishment of the new cross-species communication division. Young Voskans with empathic abilities were being identified and offered special training rather than being hidden away. Trade agreements between Earth and Voska expanded daily. What surprised Jiwoo most was how many ordinary Voskans approached her, often hesitantly, to ask about Earth family structures and human emotional concepts. Her galactic Reddit posts had sparked curiosity that went far beyond politics. On her final evening before returning to Earth, Jiwoo sat in the palace garden where she had once hidden as a child. Lord Tahoe joined her, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "You have done well," he said finally. "Better than I expected." "Thank you, Father. The human training methods for empathic abilities, they truly help with control." "Yes," Jiwoo replied. "Professor Sumi's techniques allow me to focus my abilities without being overwhelmed. I can sense emotions when needed, but shield myself when necessary." Lord Tahoe nodded slowly. "Perhaps there are other Voskan children who could benefit from such training. I'll arrange for Professor Sumi to send educational materials," Jiwoo offered, understanding what her father couldn't quite bring himself to ask. They sat in silence for a while, more comfortable than any they had shared before. "I read something interesting on that galactic platform you use," Lord Tahoe said finally. "A human concept called second chances. The idea that errors can be acknowledged and relationships rebuilt. Is this possible, do you think?" Jiwoo felt a surge of emotion from her father. Hope, uncertainty, regret. "I believe so," she said quietly. "Earth taught me that bridges can be built where walls once stood." The next morning, as Jiwoo prepared to board her shuttle back to Earth, Lord Tahoe handed her a small data device. "I have written something," he said stiffly, "for your galactic Reddit. You may post it if you find it acceptable." Curious, Jiwoo read the message later, aboard the shuttle. "Galactic Reddit, /interspecies experiences. I am Lord Tahoe of the Voskan High Council. For those who have followed my daughter Jiwoo's journey, I wish to add my perspective. Voskan culture values strength, strategy, and tactical advantage. These are not wrong values, but they are incomplete. My daughter's time among humans has demonstrated that understanding others, what she calls empathy, can be a form of strength our people had not recognized. 3 years ago, I gave my daughter to humans believing I was discarding weakness. Instead, I unknowingly created a bridge between our worlds that has strengthened both. I did not have the wisdom to see her potential, but others did. To the humans who welcomed my daughter, you taught her what our culture could not. For this, you have my gratitude. To other Voskans reading this, strength takes many forms. Perhaps it is time we expanded our definition. To Jiwoo, you have brought honor to our house in ways I never anticipated. Your Earth family helped you grow. Perhaps in time, you will allow me to do the same." Jiwoo stared at the message for a long time, tears gathering in her eyes. Another behavior she had learned was acceptable on Earth. With a deep breath, she pressed submit. Within hours, Lord Tejo's message became the most shared post in galactic Reddit history, spreading across 17 systems and translated into 32 languages. The story of the unwanted daughter, who became a bridge between worlds, resonated across species boundaries, challenging assumptions about difference, value, and family. As Earth came into view through the shuttle window, Juwu reflected on her journey. She had left Volska as discarded property and returned as an ambassador. She had found a home on Earth while beginning to heal her connection to Volska. Most importantly, she had discovered that differences could be strengths when placed in the right environment. Her father's message suggested that perhaps even the most rigid minds could learn, in time, to see value in the unexpected. It wasn't a perfect ending. Nothing in real life was as neat as stories, but it was a beginning. A new paradigm for her father, and perhaps for both their worlds. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.